Dricus Du Plessis lost his title, and even though he was champion for only a year and a half, you could say that it's the end of an era in its own way. Despite him losing the title to Khamzat Chimaev in a wrestling-heavy affair, the discourse around his title reign for a big portion of the MMA community revolved around his striking technique and the perceived jank about it. So what's jank? According to Oxford, janky is something of extremely poor or unreliable quality. But in the MMA sphere, we mostly use janky to refer to some technical eccentricities or deficiencies in the technique of a fighter that make him look untechnical, sloppy, or straight up goofy. In combat sports, we can break down the approach of a fighter in three main categories. Oversimplifying here, strategy is the overarching plan to be executed, tactics are the selection of tools that a fighter chooses to execute said strategy, and finally technique, the way those tools are physically executed. Fighting is not exact science, so technique is subjective to a certain degree. But I think most coaches and fighters can agree that good technique is the one that allows you to execute a movement in an efficient and safe way to accomplish an objective. For example, a simple jab, you want it to have little tail before it is fired, you want it to follow an efficient straight path, you want it to carry a respectable amount of pop, and you want it to keep you safe for as many counters as possible. So while there might be some discussions and gray areas when it comes to execution of certain techniques, there's an overall idea of what constitutes good and bad technique for the most part. So why do we see bad technique then? There might be athletic limitations when it comes to coordination or injuries that led to certain form. A lot of it comes to habits from your first years of training. And it can also come to just feel and reluctancy to adhere to norms. And we gotta consider that there are no fighters with perfect technique across the board. Even fighters like St-Pierre or José Aldo, who in their primes were tremendous athletes, owners of a great jab, and some of the best footwork we ever seen in MMA, I would argue had janky power right hands during their championship reigns. How important is technique then? That's a complicated topic. Me and many other fans, analysts, coaches, and fighters would argue that good strategy and tactics will often beat pretty execution. And while ideas can trump form, there's a point of diminishing returns. For example, in the first fight between Dricus Du Plessis and Sean Strickland, towards the end of the fight, both were trying to land big right hands on each other, but both fighters' technique were doing them a disservice in this situation, as their poor form was robbing them of power and accuracy, turning what could have been damaging shots with fight-ending potential into just big clubbing shots that were adding attrition. Or how about the many times we've seen fighters getting KO'd from leaping into range from afar? Yes, there's a poor selection of tactics here deciding to do this. But how easier does a counter become when a fighter is squaring their stance in front of you with their arms wide open and their chin hanging up in the air? Mixed martial arts is a sport with an almost infinite amount of variables, and this has led to a wide array of approaches to work at an elite level. Sometimes good ideas with poor execution can come out on top. Sometimes it is the jank itself that allows a fighter to be creative and surprise with something that hasn't been seen before. But at the same time, there's a reason coaches try to instill good technique and habits into their fighters. There's only so much you can get away with when going against what's tested and proved. I think nitpicking about technique, especially about those who are less experienced in combat sports, can be unproductive and can take away from your ability to understand what's really going on in a fight. If you want to analyze a fight, be it to get better as a fighter yourself, or just because you're fascinated by how the sport works, I think it is better to always ask yourself questions about why a fighter has the technique they do. Put on the balance, the pros and the cons, and how it all relates to the rest of their games, the tactics they use, and the strategy they are trying to impose. Those are just some thoughts I have about technique and its relevancy in combat sports. What do you guys think? Should there be a greater emphasis on execution, or can I be a strong technique most of the time? Let me know in the comments. I know this is somewhat of a different video from what I've been doing lately, but I think a lot of my longtime followers will like this one, even if it doesn't reach much people here on YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, remember that you can support me on Patreon and get access to exclusive content, or you can head over to my store to buy some combat sports related merch with original designs. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.